Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story about a sly payback on a power-playing colleague, featuring a perfect example of petty revenge executed with precision. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Colleague makes me wait, I get even. I work for an airline that flies all over Asia. On one Shanghai layover trip, I was paired with a first officer, call him FO, known to have a chip on his shoulder. He'd actually joined the airline ahead of me, but for whatever reason was still languishing in the co-pilot seat, while most of his contemporaries had already progressed to captain. It wasn't that he was a bad pilot. His stick and rudder skills were actually quite good, but his attitude left much to be desired. He was known to grumble openly about still being in the co-pilot seat, blamed his failed upgrade on management pilots or instructors whom he thought had it in for him. I could sense he felt his seniority in the airline overrode the captain's authority in the flight deck. He was pushy and liked to make decisions without consultation, even if they weren't his to make. Other captains agreed with this assessment. We were on a 2-night layover. The flight itself went well, and we checked into the hotel just past midnight. As we headed to our rooms, he asked if I had any plans. I said I wanted to visit a far corner of the city to see the sights, culminating in a late lunch at a century-old restaurant known for its soup dumplings. He asked if he could go, and I said I'd be happy to have him along. We agreed to meet for breakfast at 9 a.m. and leave the hotel by 10:30. 9 a.m. sharp, I was at the hotel cafe. FO was nowhere to be found. As a courtesy, I waited 10 minutes before deciding to eat ahead. I was nearly done by the time FO waltzed in at around 9:35. He acted as if nothing happened, and I thought nothing of it. Perhaps he was just tired from our late-night flight and needed to catch a few more wings. After chatting briefly over breakfast, I decided to go back to my room to get ready. We agreed to meet in the lobby at 10:30. At 10:30 sharp, I was in the lobby, but FO was nowhere to be found. He wouldn't show up for another 20 minutes. No apologies, no explanations. He just sauntered into the lobby acting as if nothing happened. I again brushed it off and went on our way. The following day, I wanted to do some shopping. Again, FO asked to tag along, and again he was late for breakfast and the lobby meetup. At that point, the thought occurred to me, like some D-wad who thinks showing up last makes him the most important person in the room, FO was engaged in a deliberate power play meant to drive home the fact that I was his junior. I'm a staunch believer of the maxim, don't get mad, get even. FO needed to be put in his place. But how? Telling him off would be too easy and too crass. I wanted to be more subtle and didn't know how. Yet. By mid-afternoon, we were back at the hotel resting for our flight home. The cruise shuttle was scheduled to pick us up at 10:30 p.m. At around 8 p.m., the phone rang. It was the front desk manager relaying a message from our ground handler. Due to a weather-related delay, our departure time would be moved back 2 hours. This meant our hotel pickup would also be moved back 2 hours. I thanked the manager and was about to put the phone down when he asked, "Would you like me to inform your colleague as well?" At that very moment, a naughty little thought kernel that had been germinating in the nether regions of my consciousness exploded into full bloom. I now had my payback, and it was going to be interest-bearing. "Oh, don't bother," I said. "I'll call him myself." And with that, I put the phone down, reset my alarm, and went back to sleep. At 12:30 a.m. sharp, I walked into the hotel lobby. FO was there. Had been there for the past 2 hours. "Oh, didn't anyone tell you our flight was going to be delayed?" I asked with feigned surprise. He shook his head glumly. "So sorry to hear that," I said, somewhat too sympathetically. "Anyway, shall we go? Shuttle's here." I turned towards the door and quickly walked away. It was all I could do to hide that diabolical grin. Have you ever had to deal with a colleague who tried to play power games? Share your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales of clever comeuppance. And our second story. Why are you asking a clear customer? I went to a buffet restaurant, and I heard someone talking in line behind me, but I ignored him because I'm by myself, so I wasn't even thinking he could be talking to me. After a minute, he grabs my shoulder roughly and turns me to him and starts yelling in my face, "Hey, do you work here?" I was having a nice, quiet day to myself and was not matching that energy, but I rose to the challenge pretty quickly and replied, "Do I look like I work here?" Ending with a tone that could only mean idiot. Everyone in line was staring at us at this point, so I turned to the guy in front of me and said loudly, "Do you believe this guy?" Ending with the same tone that could only mean idiot. The guy in front starts giggling like a schoolgirl, so now I feel like he's my audience and I need to perform. The guy who yelled at me just goes, "Oh well, I work here, and I thought you did too, because this needs to be replenished." He stared at me like he was waiting for me to do something, as though I was lying about having not worked there. I stared at this guy for the longest time with a "OMG, you really are stupid" look, and slowly turned to the giggler to show him my face, and this poor guy looked like he was going to pee himself. Honestly, the guy even had the face of a D-head. How did this guy tie his shoes? If you work in the service industry, why are you a jerk to a fellow service worker? I'm in line in front of you, getting food just like you. If you work somewhere, how do you not know your coworkers? And why would I give a F even if I did work there? If I was in line getting food, obviously I wouldn't be on the clock. I got out of my car at the same time this guy did. He parked next to me, and we walked in together. I'm wearing a miniskirt, heels, and a tube top with my hair down. How could I be mistaken for an employee? It's not like I'm wearing red in Target. I start saying this crap to the guy in front of me, and he's bent over the broccoli, losing his crap. The guy behind me was so mad I could feel the fuming when I was grilling him to the other patrons right in front of him like he wasn't even there. I hope he learns his lesson. Keep your hands to yourself and be kinder to strangers, especially if you want something from them. You know that kindergarten stuff? Apparently he missed it. And our next story, and our second story. Karen can't understand basic kindness. When I was 17, I worked at McDonald's. Now, the fact that the red and black uniform of McDonald's looks nothing like the blue-centric Walmart uniform has little bearing on this story, because as we know, the only colors a Karen can see are beneath me and my reflection. So I was visiting Walmart after work, straight out of work. I was still in uniform and my hair was a mess, so I still had my McDonald's hat on. I swung by electronics to check out the games, and while I was looking at them, there was a pretty young kid like 10 and his mother talking to an employee about what game he wanted to get. I overheard their whole conversation while looking at the games myself. He wanted a Pokemon game, but didn't know which one to get. It was between Ruby and Emerald. The kid was clearly into Pokemon, but this was his first time getting one of the games because he just got his first Game Boy and he could only get one. His mom clearly had no idea, and the employee, a very pleasant older gentleman who didn't know beans about something like Pokemon, were trying to puzzle out the difference between the two games. I loved the kid's enthusiasm and totally understood his anxiety about wanting to get the right one. And since I could see his mother and the employee struggling, I went ahead and politely interjected myself. As a big fan of the games, I knew an unhealthy amount about them. I explained the general difference between the games and answered his questions about them, and he ended up going with Emerald. His biggest concern was making sure he could get a Torchic. After the very relieved adults headed off to the register to check out, I was about to leave when an older gentleman with their husband got my attention and asked, "I need help with the TVs." I responded, "Sorry, I don't really know anything about TVs." "Well, why not? Aren't you expected to?" she huffed back. I realized that in spite of my uniform, she thought I was an employee. I laughed and told her, "Sorry, I don't work here. I work for McDonald's." She huffed again and said, "Well, you were helping these people just a minute ago." "Yes, because I knew the answer and was able to help." She snorted, "Well, why would you do that if you don't work here?" I was genuinely baffled by the question, and I just looked at her and said, "To be nice?" "Well, I don't know why you would do something like that." I just stared at her, like, how do you even respond to that? After a moment of silence, she finally asked, "So can you help me with the TVs or not?" I just said, "No," and walked away. I don't quite understand what about basic human kindness is so confusing, but there it sits. But the little boy got his Torchic, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Some people are incapable of thinking of people doing something they personally would not. It's concerning how often common decency or friendliness is the trait in question. And our last story. Neighbor pressing charges for something he built on my property. Hi everyone, my neighbor built something on my property and I removed it. He has now gotten the police involved and is pressing charges. He has cameras up of me doing it. He had a fence that's directly on our shared property line and built a retaining wall on our property about 1 to 2 feet into ours. The wall constantly got our dogs tangled up when we let them out on their leash, so we removed the wall and left the blocks on the side of his fence for him. They were not damaged. We have 3 vehicles and a camper trailer parked by our shared property line. All are running, but he can't see past them and says it's devaluing his property by us having them there. We've had multiple altercations with said neighbor, all documented. He's come onto our property to film and take pictures of us. 3 of us removed the wall, but only I'm being charged. We all live together, so he seems to be singling me out. So I sought the advice of a property attorney. The first step was to gather all the documentation of our interactions, including photos, videos, and records of previous altercations. My attorney emphasized the importance of proving that the retaining wall was built on our property and that our actions were justified. We hired a professional surveyor to accurately determine the property lines. The survey confirmed that the retaining wall was indeed built on our land, providing crucial evidence for our defense. Additionally, we documented how the wall posed a hazard to our dogs, further justifying its removal. When the case went to court, my attorney presented a thorough and well-documented argument. We showcased the survey results, photos of the wall's location, and videos of our neighbor's intrusive behavior. We also highlighted that we left the blocks undamaged on his property, demonstrating that our actions were not destructive but necessary to reclaim our space. During the proceedings, the court took note of the fact that the wall was not a permanent structure and that its removal was handled responsibly. The neighbor's surveillance footage showed us removing the wall, but it also clearly indicated that we left the materials intact on his side. Furthermore, my attorney questioned why the neighbor singled me out when 3 of us participated in the removal, pointing to a pattern of harassment. The judge carefully reviewed all the evidence and testimonies. Ultimately, the court ruled in our favor, recognizing that the retaining wall was unlawfully built on our property and that we were within our rights to remove it. The charges against me were dropped, and the neighbor was instructed to refrain from further harassment and to respect the property boundaries. This was a clear message that we would not tolerate baseless accusations or harassment. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.